It started like a setup, like a trap disguised as a hearing, and you could tell from the smirk on Marjorie Taylor Greene's face that she thought this would be the knockout. She had the screen queued up. She had her talking points printed. She had her followers foaming in the comments section. What she didn't have was the foresight to realize Democrats know how to deal with receipts, especially when they're weaponized wrong. "Good morning," she said, in a voice drenched in performative concern. "Today's hearing is about waste, and how this government has grown too big, too bloated." And with that, she hit play on what she called a video Democrats don't want you to see. Cut to Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, all of them on camera, saying the same phrases she thought would finish us. Cut red tape, shrink government, save taxpayer dollars, get rid of useless federal buildings, eliminate unnecessary contracts, even assign the vice president to track waste. That was supposed to be the gotcha, like showing we'd somehow betrayed our own words. But what she didn't realize, you don't win a debate by quoting your opponent, especially when we said it first. And when the video faded to black, she looked up, like she'd just dropped the bomb, like we'd be fumbling, panicking. But we weren't, because Democrats weren't the ones exposed in that clip. It was her party's hypocrisy that was glowing like a warning sign. She leaned into the mic and said, "Too bad my Democrat colleagues don't feel the same way today. Really, let's talk about who cut the deficit, who passed the Inflation Reduction Act, who's actually trying to claw back those $37 trillion in debt. Because if all you've got is an old tape of Clinton, Obama, and Biden agreeing with you, that's not a trap. That's a confession. You just proved we've been fighting the same fight longer than you've had a seat. You want to talk about a video?" Jasmine said, "Cool. Let's talk about what you didn't include. Because edits don't equal evidence. And if you're going to roll tape, make sure the reel includes context." She reached for her folder, a single sheet marked, "Full Speech Transcripts." Let's start with Bill Clinton. Yeah, he talked about cutting government. But what else did he say? That we had to invest in people. That shrinking the bureaucracy meant streamlining services, not gutting safety nets. He wasn't calling for chaos. He was calling for competence. Now let's talk about Barack Obama. You clipped him saying we need to eliminate waste. What you didn't play? The part where he talked about investing in healthcare and clean energy and education. Because saving money doesn't mean you stop spending. It means you spend smarter. And Joe Biden, let's be real. He told the cabinet to hunt down waste, and guess what? We did. Billions clawed back. Fraud programs shut down. Duplicate offices consolidated. That's not the scandal you thought it was. That's governing. She turned toward MTG. And here's what you really left out. The entire reason these presidents made those speeches is because Republicans never do it when they're in charge. She locked eyes. Not angry, just surgical. You act like government spending exploded under Democrats. But what exploded under Trump? A deficit. After he cut taxes for billionaires. What didn't get smaller? The Pentagon budget. The fossil fuel subsidies. The contracts to private detention centers. So no, that video didn't make us sweat. It made us laugh. Because all you did was show that we've been trying to fix the mess. While your party kept lighting the matches. You say you're against big government. Jasmine said. But your votes don't match your voice. Because if waste is the enemy, then why do you keep funding the exact systems that feed it? Let's talk about subsidies. Billions in tax breaks to oil companies that made record profits while families couldn't afford gas. You call that efficiency? Let's talk about contracts. Private prisons that get paid per bed and still somehow get taxpayer bonuses even when they violate human rights. Is that what Doge is fighting to protect? Let's talk about the military budget. You say we need to trim the fat, but when it comes to endless defense contracts, y'all suddenly forget where the scissors are. And let me get this straight. You want to eliminate jobs, but not weapons we don't use. You want to slash departments, but won't touch contractors with lobbyists on speed dial. That's not small government. That's corporate protectionism, wrapped in red, white, and blue branding. And let's be honest, you didn't roll that video to expose hypocrisy. You rolled it to distract from your own. Because you know what Doge actually did under Trump. It didn't cut private contracts. It didn't go after overbilling. It didn't touch Pentagon waste. It targeted federal workers, the same clerks, inspectors, analysts, and caseworkers that keep the government running. The same people y'all love to demonize because they don't wear suits or sign checks. So yeah, the video looked good on camera. But the record tells the truth. And the truth is, you're not against big government. You're just against government that works for people instead of donors. So let's assume, Jasmine said, that Doge, this Department of Government Efficiency you keep worshipping, actually works. Then I've got a question. If Doge is so effective, if it's the big bad watchdog that you claim scared every Democrat into hiding, why are y'all still holding hearings like this? Why are you still screaming into microphones, still blaming the same people for problems you say were already fixed? She looked directly at MTG. Let me guess. Because it's not about saving money. It's about selling a narrative. It's about using words like fraud and abuse, as if you just discovered them while ignoring the fact that your own party held the pen when most of these contracts were signed. You want to brag about $180 billion in cuts. Cool. Now tell me, where did it go? Was it reinvested into education, public health, clean water in cities where children can't drink from a tap? Or did it disappear into the same black hole of austerity where tax breaks for the rich go to retire? Let's stop pretending Doge was some radical invention. Every president since Reagan talked about cutting waste. Clinton tried, Obama tried, even Bush took a swing. But you know what's different? They didn't use it as a campaign stunt. They didn't build a website, put a gold border around it, and treat it like a Marvel movie spin-off. They didn't say, here's Doge, the government superhero, and then weaponize it against people making $42,000 a year. What Trump did was fire workers, cut oversight, and rebrand corporate favoritism as efficiency. And now you want to bring Elon Musk into it. Fine. But last time I checked, Twitter collapsing under fake verification wasn't exactly a masterclass in streamlined systems. So no, I'm not clapping for Doge. Not when it's being used as a bludgeon instead of a blueprint. Not when you're more interested in attacking programs than actually explaining what you'd build in their place. Let's talk about patterns, Jasmine said, because this ain't the first time I've seen this movie. Every time Republicans scream about government waste, they cut services, they cut jobs, they cut protections, but they never cut the strings tied to power. Let's go back. Ronald Reagan. He slashed social programs, claimed the government was the problem. Meanwhile, military spending skyrocketed, and so did corporate welfare. You call that small government? That's selective surgery. Then came Bill Clinton. And yes, I'll call out my own party too. He tried to run to the left, got slapped back to the center by Newt Gingrich and the so-called revolution. So what happened? He agreed to welfare reform, fired 377,000 federal workers, and made deals that looked good on paper but left a lot of people behind. Fast forward. George W. Bush tax cuts for the rich war spending that broke the budget, but not a word about trimming Halliburton contracts. Then Barack Obama. He promised hope and change. And yeah, he tried. But even he kept the Bush tax cuts. Because once the rich get a discount, Washington never takes it back. So don't stand here and act like Trump invented cutting government. He just made it louder. He took credit for firing workers while giving billionaires tax breaks and throwing out contracts that benefited the public, not because they were wasteful, but because they weren't profitable. Now you bring up this deferred resignation program. 75,000 workers gone. And that's supposed to be a win. Tell that to the people whose benefits are delayed. Tell that to the veteran waiting on a claim. Tell that to the small-town clinic that can't process Medicaid paperwork. Because that's what efficiency looks like when you don't care who gets cut. You want a smaller government? Fine. But don't lie about what gets smaller. It's never the giveaways, never the subsidies, never the campaign loopholes. It's always the programs that help people you don't see. Let's be honest. Jasmine said, you don't want a smaller government. You want a government that doesn't serve people you don't like. That's what this has always been about. Because every time we talk about cutting spending, you skip over corporate agriculture, skip over fossil fuel tax shelters, skip over defense contractor bonuses, and go straight to the programs that feed children, fund public schools, and provide health care in zip codes that don't show up on your donor list. She held up a chart. Medicaid expansion slashed. School meal programs on the chopping block. Environmental cleanup grants frozen. But oil subsidies intact. Farm bailouts expanded. Luxury real estate tax shelters still there. You're not shrinking government. You're rerouting it. You're taking money from working people, from vulnerable families, from disabled veterans, and handing it to companies that donated to your campaign and billionaires who'll thank you with a check, not a vote. Wesley Hunt shifted in his seat. MTG looked down at her notes. Because this wasn't theory. It was exposure. Let me ask you this, Jasmine said. When was the last time any of y'all proposed a spending cut that touched your base? Your donors. Your consultants. The corporations that keep your party alive. You say we're wasting money. But you don't mind spending billions to detain asylum seekers or fund walls that don't work or run investigations into problems you invented. You want order. Then why do you fuel chaos? You want savings. Then why do you only cut where it hurts, people who have nothing left to give? She looked around the room. Eyes clear. Voice steady. Until y'all are willing to talk about waste at the top, in the contracts, in the backdoor deals, in the tax code. Then don't come for public servants, don't come for social workers, don't come for families just trying to survive, because the real waste is hiding behind the word efficiency. I want to speak directly, Jasmine said. Not to the people in this room, but to the ones watching at home. The single mom in Ohio, the veteran in Texas, the teacher in Georgia, the retiree in Detroit. Because when they say government waste, they're not talking about private jets or billion-dollar loopholes or the no-bid contracts handed out like candy. They're talking about you. They're talking about your benefits, your clinic, your kid's school, your heating assistance. They're talking about the paperwork that got delayed because the office closed early due to staffing cuts. They're talking about the food stamps that got reduced because some lawmaker thought your grocery bill was political. They call it efficiency, but you feel it as exhaustion. The phone line that never picks up. The application that never gets processed. The help you were promised, now called entitlement like dignity, became a luxury item. And what do you get in return? You get politicians bragging about cutting red tape while making it harder for you to reach anyone with answers. You get slogans. While your rent goes up, your prescriptions disappear, your neighborhood hospital shuts down. And they call that reform. She paused. Not for effect, but because the silence was doing more work than a headline ever could. If you've ever waited 6 hours at the DMV, if you've ever begged a government office for help, if you've ever been told we lost your file or we're understaffed or check back next month after they already had your case for 6, then you've lived the cost of these policies, and that cost is always paid by the quietest people in the room, not the loudest ones behind the mic. Let me turn this back on you, Jasmine said, eyes locked on MTG. If Doge is so revolutionary, if your efficiency movement is working, then why are your own constituents still drowning? Why is rural Georgia still battling poverty levels above the national average? Why are maternal mortality rates higher in red states, even after all this cost-cutting? Why are small businesses still waiting on basic infrastructure, while billion-dollar corporations walk away with subsidies and tax forgiveness? She leaned in, not to intimidate, but to reveal. You stood here and showed a video of 3 Democratic presidents talking about reform, and you thought that made them hypocrites. No, that made them human. Because leadership isn't about pretending the system is perfect. It's about admitting when it fails and fixing it for the next family, the next veteran, the next child born into a zip code that Congress forgot. But what you've done is weaponize the idea of failure. You turned it into theater, so you could raise money and go viral and sell t-shirts that say defund everything. But nothing you said today, nothing in that video, nothing in your headlines has made a single mother's rent go down. Not one child ate better because you played that clip. Not one hospital reopened. Not one social worker got a raise. Not one community center stayed funded. You want to talk about numbers? Show me the impact. Not in committee rooms. In lives. In families. In results. Because if Doge is just a PR stunt, if all of this is just another chapter in your performance art campaign, then be honest about that. Say it's about clout, not about change. Say it's about donors, not the people who elected you. Because if you won't say it, I just did. You came here today, Jasmine said, with a video, a slogan, and a list of talking points you've rehearsed 100 times. And I came here with the same thing I always bring. Receipts, record, and reality. You thought the video would embarrass us. But what it did was remind people that Democrats have always been willing to say the quiet part out loud. We know government isn't perfect. That's why we work to fix it, not gut it. We don't pretend every program is efficient. We don't deny when systems get bloated. We don't scream about red tape while holding the scissors that tied it in the first place. You want to talk about efficiency? Then explain why your office is still requesting federal grants from the same government you say should be smaller. Explain why you brag about slashing programs but still campaign on their benefits when you need rural votes. Explain how you claim to hate the deep state but have no problem collecting your check from it. Because here's the truth. You don't hate big government. You just hate when big government helps people you don't want helped. You don't hate spending. You just hate when it goes to communities that don't vote like you. You don't hate bureaucracy. You just hate accountability. And that's not policy. That's projection. And I won't let that sit on the record unchallenged. Not today, not ever. Before I yield my time, Jasmine said, I want the record to reflect this. You can't shame people who are telling the truth. You can't defeat ideas you refuse to understand. And you definitely can't fix a system you only weaponize. You came in here thinking we'd stumble, that we'd fold under your clip package and your sound bites. But what you didn't expect was for someone to sit here, look you in the eye, and dismantle your argument without ever raising their voice. Because facts don't flinch. And I don't either. She stood up, folder in hand, voice steady. Nothing rattled, everything calculated. This job isn't about theater. It's not about cameras or viral moments or political cosplay. It's about people, real people, who can't afford for us to treat government like a stage or the budget like a weapon. So the next time you think a video will embarrass us, make sure you've read what's behind the footage. Make sure you're ready to be the one answering for it. Because today, you didn't expose Democrats. You exposed yourself. The room was silent, not because she yelled, but because truth has volume all its own. And today, it echoed.